And if you start praying for healing, you will see healing. You really will. We started praying for healing in my Bible church that didn't believe in healing, and we started seeing it. Let me just tell you one of the sweetest healings that I've seen recently. This was in the church we started a few years ago. Little parents brought, at the end of the services, we have teams that we've taught how to pray for the sick. We really believe that spiritual gifts are part of your purpose for being here. You didn't get a gift by accident. You got that spiritual gift or combination of gifts because you have a purpose to fulfill on earth. And part of the fulfillment of that purpose is learning what your gift is, learning how to use it really effectively, and then walking in it. And when you do that, you get to go into a realm of joy that is absolutely wonderful. So one of the things we do in our church, so one of the kind of core values of our church, is we do not want you sitting there on Sunday morning and just being a spectator. We want to figure out a way to help you find your gift and then use it first in the church where it's comfortable and easy to fail in front of people. And you'll never find your gift if you can't fail in front of people. You have to get comfortable with failure. That's how you grow. Then we want you to take that gift and take it into the place where you work, your school, your neighborhood, your business, wherever it is. That's kind of our philosophy. So at the end of most of our services, we will give an invitation for salvation. Hardly anybody ever responds to that. We're still just stealing sheep from other churches. We don't want to do that, but that's now our high school kids, they're leading someone to the Lord every week, but somehow us adults, we hadn't got this figured out yet. But it's in my heart to be an evangelist. We're just not doing a very good job of that. But we are doing a pretty good job of praying for people. So we give an invitation for salvation, and then we'll sometimes call out words of knowledge, or we'll just say, if you'd like prayer, come to the front, and we'll pray for you, or pray about direction or a healing. Well, this is maybe 4 or 5 months ago. Heather and Keith Owens brought little Emily up to the front. Emily's a 12-week-old baby girl. They were crying when they brought her up to the front for these people to pray for. And the reason they're crying is they'd noticed in these 12 weeks that Emily has no startle response. That means if you do this into her eyes don't blink. If you come up behind her and you shout real loud or you slam a door, she doesn't move. That means that she's not seeing and she's not hearing. So they've taken her back to the pediatrician, and he says, by this time she should be responding. She should have a startle response. I'm afraid that she's blind and she's deaf. And he set up an appointment that following Thursday with a specialist, a pediatrics ophthalmologist and audiologist. So they bring her up to the front, and sure enough, that's true. Her eyes aren't tracking. She's not responding to any stimuli. And one of the people just picks her into his arms, and I just thought, that reminds me of Jesus holding the babies. And then prayed for that little baby girl to hear and to see, and parents were weeping, and then gave her back to the parents, and the person actually said, I think she's going to hear and see. I really do think she's going to be okay. And I'm certainly not a big proponent of telling someone you're healed or anything like that. But this person had a fairly strong impression. She's going to be okay. And then on Wednesday, just before they were taking her to the specialist, Keith came home, slammed the door, and little Emily went like that. Started seeing and hearing perfectly. Ever once in a while someone says, well, what are you so interested in healing for? And, well, if you're well, you're not interested in healing. But if you if you really want to serve people, you got to be interested in healing. Healing's not about spirituality. It's about serving people. It's just another tool to serve people with. And the same for hearing God. When people go, I don't want a charismatic church. I don't want to do all that weird stuff. And some of you here might be thinking that, I don't want to do that weird stuff. Well, don't worry, you're Anglicans. You're not going to do anything weird. Just focus on hearing God and praying for people to get better. Just because God really honors those things. I'll tell you just one more story, and then I want to make one major point about widening the tent. After we started believing that God speaks, we started having times where in our small groups we'd say, Lord, would you speak to us? And he began to speak to us, and we began to hear the secrets of hearts. And it was just so exciting. And I got involved in the vineyard, and John Wimber became one of my closest friends and my greatest mentor. I learned so much from him that I could never have learned in a classroom. I am so grateful for that man and for his influence on the church in the 20th century, for his influence on me and my friends. And one of the greatest privileges of my life was to work with him for about 4 years in Anaheim and to get to watch the way he ran a church and to go to conferences with him. And seminary professors from all over the world would come in to have him pray for them and to ask questions about their ministry. And it was just a wonderful time. And the church experience was wonderful. There were about, maybe 5,000 people involved in the church back in those days. In those days, that was really a big church. I know there are a lot bigger churches now. But one of the things I used to love to do was visit our small children. We had 2 services in the morning and 1 in the evening. And we had maybe 14, 15 pastors on staff. And you couldn't be involved in every service. And there was one Sunday night I wasn't involved in a service. And so I got one of the prophetic guys on staff, and I said, let's go back and talk to the 10 to 12-year-olds. And we had them for like an hour and a half. And we were meeting in this big warehouse, and there were probably about 150 of these little 10 to 12-year-olds just running wild in this big room in the warehouse, and they'd have a little time of worship, and then they would learn how to do ministry too. They would learn about the gifts or learn about Jesus. And so I was coming in to talk to them that night. Now, I didn't even pray about what I was going to do. I didn't go, God, do you have an opinion about these kids this evening? I did nothing. I just go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to answer every question those kids ask me. I'm going to let them ask me any question they want to about God, theology, the Bible, what it's like to be a pastor. And I didn't pray about it because what's a 12-year-old going to ask you? So I took the prophetic guy. We got in there, and kids were climbing the wall, and they all had extra doses of sugar that afternoon. And so we got them all seated, and I go, okay, ask anything you want, kids. And so first little kid, he throws his hand up, and he goes, Pastor Jack, this has really been bothering me. He says, how come bad things happen to good people who love God and are trying to follow God? Oh, yeah, funny. It's funny, yeah. Do you know the answer to that? I mean, theologians have been trying to figure that out for 2,000 years, and no one's figured it out. He just put his finger on the problem of a good God and suffering, and no one's been able to answer that to anyone's real satisfaction. But when you're kind of a theological type, you don't say, I don't know. You just lapse into theological jargon. So I looked at that little kid and I said, well, you see, son, in the beginning, God wanted friends, not robots. And he gave us the dignity of free choice. And I just kind of went on in that vein for a while. And I knew when I walked in that room that night, those kids were going to be overwhelmed with my knowledge of the Bible. They're going to be so impressed. And I was looking in their little eyes, and I could tell they weren't impressed at all in the vein I was going. In fact, they were kind of bored. And so finally I just cut it off. I said, okay, another question. Little kid raises his hand. He says, why did God create the devil? My mind was racing through the Bible, and I'm thinking, Ezekiel 28 talks about its creation maybe, but never says why. I'm thinking, why did God create the devil? We must have needed him for some reason. I don't. So I look at that little kid and I go, well, you see, in the beginning, God wanted friends, not robots.